All right, good evening. It is 6:05, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. I want to just first note that our board president, Heather Owsley, asked me to mention that she will not be able to be with us this evening because she had a medical emergency. So we're going to continue on. Our first agenda item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll begin. I need to seek a motion to adopt the agenda.
Madam Vice President, I'd like to make a motion that we remove agenda item 3.02 and table that conversation due to the fact that there's only 3 board members able to be here in person this evening.
Okay, 4, but yeah. Oh, 3 could not be here this evening in person, yes, okay.
Well,
4 here?
There's 4 in person.
Yeah.
I realize Mr. Stratton is joining us remotely, but I think it's an important conversation, and I think having more board members here would benefit us.
Second, Borgman.
Thank you for that. And we have a second?
Second, Borgman.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, moving on to the superintendent report 2.01. Dr. Edwards.
Thank you. I'm very excited to share that all of our schools are joining us in Read Across SMSD. We are encouraging reading for all ages across our community. We are so fortunate to have had a group of students from Overland Park Elementary, libraries, and NEA Shawnee Mission join us as we launched Read Across SMSD. I'd like for you to join me in watching the video in regards to Read Across SMSD.
I like to read because I like to explore.
I like to read because it's a way to spend time with your family.
I like to read because books are very interesting.
I like to read because you get to learn and see different pictures and words.
I like to read because it's fun.
Reading wasn't always easy for me, but it helped me to get to where I am today. And I want that for all the children in the Shawnee Mission School District. I'm Dr. Michelle Hubbard, and I'm so excited to be joined today by a group of Overland Park Elementary readers as we launch Read Across SMSD. We are here to invite educators, students, families, neighbors, and friends to join us in a celebration of reading. In partnership with NEA Shawnee Mission, we are proud to launch Read Across SMSD in every single school this year.
Read Across SMSD will help all of us with academic goals and also supports our strategic plan belief that our community's strength is derived from its diversity. Each title is selected so readers can see themselves reflected and can see a world or character that might be different from them.
Read Across SMSD will feature a new theme every month, and we will be sharing book recommendations. There will be books for elementary, middle, high school, and adult readers. We'll also be sharing discussion questions to get the conversations going.
We encourage you to read these books in classrooms and libraries, on your own, with guest readers and book clubs. I can't wait to hear what my students think about these books as we get started.
All right, SMSD, it's time to pick up those books and get those pages turning.
Let's read across SMSD.
Let's read across SMSD.
Let's read across SMSD. Let's read across SMSD.
Let's read across SMSD!
So the September theme for Read Across SMSD is Embrace New Beginnings. We have students, educators, and community members reading and discussing books around the theme that even though new beginnings are scary, they can be faced. I had the joy of talking with new educators and students who are new to their school communities about their experiences. We'll share a link to what they shared in the recap. We all read across SMSD in support of our academic goals and in support of our strategic plan beliefs. This is a chance for all of us to celebrate stories and create a culture of belonging for every single student.
We'll be sharing links in the recap so that readers can pick up books from our reading list and start the conversations. So this past week, we were thrilled to help John Deemer Elementary community officially break ground on their new school building. Students did a great job leading us in the pledge, singing the school song, and taking a shovel to the construction site for the ceremonial groundbreaking. As you know, John Deemer is one of 5 elementary schools that are being rebuilt in our district as part of the bond. Westwood View Elementary is also under construction, and we expect Pawnee Elementary to be next. We are so grateful to our community, which voted for the $264 million bond referendum that made all of this possible. We're excited that Shawnee Mission will join Unified Bowling in partnership with the Kansas State High School Activities Association and Special Olympics Kansas. This is an inclusive activity program that combines Special Olympics students who have disabilities with students who do not have disabilities to compete together on teams. Excuse me. Shawnee Mission will start practicing this month. We are so excited for them and for the competition and the environment of inclusion they will all experience. We are also proud that Shawnee Mission South will serve as the host of the first Unified Bowling State Championship in November. A new healthcare resource is now available at Shawnee Mission for Shawnee Mission students and their siblings. Health Partnership Clinic at Shawnee Mission West is now open from 11 to 3 every Thursday. The clinic provides access to primary and preventative health care, chronic disease management, mental health services, and dental care. They also provide physical exams, sports physicals, health screenings, and more. We'll include information in the recap so families can make appointments. We thank everyone who has made this possible, especially the team at Shawnee Mission West, our Shawnee Mission Health Services staff and Health Services Director Shelby Reback, and everyone at the Health Partnership Clinic. Speaking of caring for students, I did want to highlight that our district observes Suicide Awareness and Prevention Week this month. While awareness and prevention must take place all year, we have had taking time in our schools to bring it to the focus. Each school developed building-specific activities to engage and empower students. I know our mental health professionals have provided resources to help students and families care for mental health. We will also provide a link in the recap to a list of resources in support of this work and to help us support one another. Thank you to everyone who is taking time to focus on suicide awareness and prevention. And the last item, we are continuing to look at the fall annual breakfast taking place the morning of September 28th, 2021. At this time, I would like to invite Executive Director Kim Hinkle to join me to talk about this event.
Thank you, Dr. Hubbard, Dr. Sinclair, members of the Board of Education. I appreciate being here. We do want to let you know that there is a change with the fall breakfast this year. We're disappointed, but we have decided after a lot of conversation with our health services, with foundation board members, Board of Education members, and really looking at the data, that it is best if we go to a virtual event this year. And so we would really love to get together and celebrate all of the good work of Shawnee Mission with our community, but I think if our goal is to keep kids in school and learning and safe, then this is just some risk that I think the foundation is not willing to take in our support of the district. So it stinks. I'm not going to lie. I'm really ready for COVID to be over. But I think it is best for our community. So we have notified our sponsors and donors. We are going to send the link out to them. We still encourage people to register for the breakfast. We will make the link available after the breakfast for the community to watch. We have lots of really good news in Shawnee Mission that we want to share. So we really do hope that even through the Zoom fatigue that we all have, that people will tune in and celebrate our kids with us. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any. Okay, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for the update. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, before we move on to 3.01, I'm going to borrow a question that Mr. Stratton typically asks. Do we have any students in the house here for government class tonight? No? Okay. All right. We'll move on to discussion item 3.01, Student and Family Services, Student Activities, Program Evaluation Strategy 2 Report.
So I'm just going to start us off by saying, as you all know, as part of Strategy 2, this is a very important work as part of the strategic plan. This team has done an amazing job with the report, which you've had in your hand for a while now, and it was live for the public on Friday. And they've been working hard and are prepared to present some exciting data to you all. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ziegler.
Well, thank you for the time this evening, allowing our team to come and share an update on our work as a student and family services team. While we don't have any students with us this evening for government, we are pleased to introduce in just a bit a couple of students who will lend some voice to the work and be able to tell about what's happening in their classrooms and their perspective. So we're excited to have Charles and Nadia with us this evening and their families. So the Department of Student and Family Services supports overall improvement of the quality of life for families, and that directly supports the educational success of all students. That's our mission, really. We connect families with necessary school and community resources, and we are able to support families as they work towards goals of ultimately self-sufficiency and stability, and that is where the work resides. On the strategic plan, really our team touches all 3 strategic plan objectives that are noted on the slide. We've all seen those quite a bit, so every single one of them is a part of the work that our team supports, so that our professionals in the schools, our teachers, our social workers, counselors, and our families and students ultimately have the supports that they need to accomplish those objectives. We work across multiple teams in the district in a very collaborative and integrated manner for the purpose of supporting the needs of our students and families and accessing educational opportunities at all levels of the district. We also work to engage, identify, and remove barriers, and then also provide support so that all students find a place of belonging where they can achieve their best success. This evening, as we start to look at the data, it's not without saying that the last 2 years have been very atypical for us in terms of preparing a program evaluation. So I just want to note that in the report and the presentation, we recognize we're reporting on the 2 very unique years of service. And the data are impacted by the pandemic and what we've experienced. So I just want to state that up front because there will be many questions, and while we've talked many times over the last few months, we don't have our crystal balls, right? Essentially, the 2021-22 school year is another opportunity to really baseline our data moving forward, right? We know we've accomplished some great strides forward with the strategic plan and achieving some of the objectives and the action steps. And we've reported those out separately over the last couple of years. So you'll see some of that repeated this evening because it does fall into the work of this team and is supported by this team. So I just want to state that in terms of we know that 21-22 is an important year for data. Not only for discipline, because it's really the first year that we'll be able to operationalize some of the changes that happen through the strategic plan and kind of retooling and providing professional development and coming together on our discipline matrix and how we see behaviors and address them. So that's a good example of this year ahead and what we look for in some new baseline data. But also in Panorama. The board's been very supportive in that aspect of giving us tools to help us work forward, and you'll hear a little bit more about that this evening. But we also know we started implementing Panorama as a survey tool for our students and families in the midst of a pandemic, right? So we'll see how we do as we move forward and continue to evaluate the data. I'm joined this evening with our presentation team that include Dr. John McKinney, Director of Student and Family Services, Amanda Harlow, Comanche Elementary social worker, David Armovich, our District McKinney-Vento liaison and social worker here at CAA, Dr. Tyrone Bates, Coordinator of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and we have student representatives, Nadia Thurman, who's a senior at Shawnee Mission Northwest, and Charles Gray, who is in Indian Hills Middle School, 8th grader this year, and then also Mr. Kent Glazer, Director of Athletics and Activities. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Dr. McKinney, and he's going to start us off with talking about some of the social emotional learning aspects of the district, as well as the work of our social work and counseling teams and overall support that we provide for McKinney-Vento service in our district.
Thank you, Dr. Ziegler. And good evening, Board. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you some of the work that we're doing. Social and emotional learning involves the processes through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitude, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So let's start with what we know. We know that students can't focus on learning if their basic needs aren't being met. The common expression in education circles is, we must Maslow before we can bloom. We have to make sure that our students' basic needs are being met before we can expect them to achieve the academic success that we know they're capable of. We also know that 1 in 6 U.S. youth aged 6 to 17 experience a mental disorder each year, and that school-based and school-linked mental health services reduce barriers to youth and families who need treatment and support. And what are we committed to? We're committed to ensuring that every student and family has access to high-quality mental health supports and resources. We're committed to educating all staff about trauma and mental health, involving the greater school community in efforts to support our students and our staff, paying attention to the mental health needs of our school staff as well as our students, and acknowledging that not all communities have experienced the pandemic in the same way. And while SMSD employs a team of 46 masters and clinical level social workers and 40 counselors, mental health is not just the responsibility of these committed mental health professionals. Ensuring that our students feel safe, valued, respected, and that their physical, social, and emotional needs are being addressed is everyone's responsibility. Students who report higher social and emotional competencies have significantly higher reading and math test scores and weighted high school GPAs. They have lower rates of suspension and greater rates of school attendance. They're less likely to be at risk for dropping out. They're more likely to graduate on time. Moreover, staff who work at schools in school districts with high buy-in for SEL report significantly less work stress and burnout than staff who work at schools where SEL buy-in is lower. The best schools foster students' academic, social, and emotional competencies. And so as a district, we are committed to doing these things, not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's part of the KSDE requirements, and also because it's part of our KISA accreditation process. We've always known that SEL is important, and this year, more than any other, we've seen how essential it is that we provide our students and our staff with quality social and emotional well-being practices. SEL in the Shawnee Mission School District, again, it's part of the Kansas State Department of Education requirements. SEL and trauma-informed practices have been embedded within the 21-22 school year curriculum. All staff completed trauma-informed care at the beginning of the school year as part of their mandated training. All staff also received training in suicide awareness and prevention, including an overview of the Jason Flatt Act. Kansas was the 19th state to enact that act and did so in 2016. Every year we look at our suicide intervention manual with our social workers and our counselors, and we go through and make sure that we're doing things as efficiently and as effectively as possible. I've said this many times, social workers are probably tired of hearing me say it, but if there's one practice that we have to make sure is exactly spot on every single time, it's the suicide intervention process. There are no rooms for mistakes when it comes to assessing our students for risk. And so that process has been refined and will continue to be refined every year. We also utilize signs of suicide, sources of strength, and second step across the district. To see where our students are socially, emotionally, we participate in the Kansas Communities That Care Survey in grades 6, 8, 10, and 12. That data is returned to us at the end of the school year, where we're able to look at we're able to look at district-wide data and consider some changes that we might be able to put in place for the following year. Social workers and counselors can provide appropriate district and local resources, support, and information. We also utilize the Panorama social emotional survey in grades 3 through 12 for those students whose parents opt them in. And that has been very beneficial for our social workers, for our teachers, for our administrators, and for our students. The next step is to make it beneficial for our parents as well. And we also ensure that all schools have functioning SIT teams with clear expectations about how that process works. And speaking of amazing social workers, we're fortunate to have with us tonight the social worker from Comanche Elementary, Amanda Harlow, who's going to tell us a little bit about her work and what SEL looks like in the classrooms of her school. Amanda?
Good evening. Thanks for having me. When John asked me to give a quick overview of what my position is as a school social worker, I was really overwhelmed with everything I've already done this year based on the different roles and number of tools that I have to use. So I'm going to kind of narrow down what my school does to support our students on a daily basis. At Comanche, I help with guiding daily morning meeting focusing on social emotional learning, which not only helps our students learn to manage their big feelings when it's hard, but how to form healthy relationships, learn to ask for help, and how to express their emotions safely with a trusted adult. The first 4 weeks of school every year, our classes focus on building a classroom community, which helps create a safe learning environment. During this time, students also learn classroom routines and expectations as well. This week, we're actually transitioning into our evidence-based curriculum, Mind Up. This curriculum is going to help students learn about how their brain responds to stress and practice strategies for quieting their mind. This allows them to be better at self-regulating and more available to learn. After this, they'll learn about how to be mindful and observing their senses. This will help sharpen their attention, enable them to enhance memory, problem solving, relationships, creativity, and physical performance. Then they will learn new ways to cultivate a positive mindset. They will prime their brain for learning and for building healthy relationships. Additionally, I'm part of our student response team and our SEL care team. We work together to help students who are struggling in class with social emotional skills. These teams help students transition out of class if necessary and go to a space that allows for a break, where they use a learned healthy calming strategy to get to a place in order to process what had happened. Then we teach and practice the missing skill with the student that caused them to have that hard time. Once we've done this, we want to get them back into class as quickly as possible. We know they're calm and ready to be a good learner. We also make plans for students that continue to have struggles in class. We create an individualized, proactive, social emotional learning time. The hope always being that the student is able to manage their big feelings and remain a part of their classroom community using healthy calming strategies. I would be remiss to not mention how hard our teachers work to be leaders and role models on how to implement SEL skills we teach our students. This includes how to build healthy relationships with trusted adults. The more connected our students become, the more we see them being willing to use the skills they're being taught. Our teachers have worked tirelessly over the last 3 years to learn and use common language for social emotional learning using a trauma-informed lens. The SRT team and the SEL team has created a tag in and tag out system for our teachers. This allows them the opportunity to ask for help and to take a break. What better way to show our students that it's okay to take a break and to ask for help than for them to see their teachers do it. Also this year, I've had multiple families reach out asking for help. There's a much more increased willingness to connect and communicate with the school team to ensure student success. I've connected many families to community resources to help meet their needs, which range from food or housing insecurity to mental health needs. We have some amazing community support, which we would be lost without. Part of my role is seeking out opportunities to build this community, and we're lucky to be a part of the Caring for Kids program, which has connected us with some community partners that are truly amazing. St. Thomas the Apostle Episcopal Church and the Community Impact Church have been an invaluable resource for us. Last year, they provided individual calming kits for every student in our building in an effort to help us follow safety protocols for COVID and to ensure that the support was available for each student to meet their social emotional needs. This year, they supplied backpacks filled with school supplies that went to over 60 students. They've collaborated with us with harvesters to create a mobile food pantry that we do on the second Saturday of every month. This past Saturday, we served 117 families, and this program continues to grow. They also help us with our back snack program to ensure kids have access to kid-friendly, easy food options for over the weekend. They're excited to collaborate with us this year, and we're excited to meet with them later this month to do so. I would like to close by thanking the board for funding. The funding that every elementary school in Shawnee Mission now has a full-time social worker. This will prove to be such an amazing change and opportunity. Having a full-time licensed mental health professional in every building will only help our communities become stronger and better than they already are. It is clear that the board sees the value in addressing and growing social emotional needs we are seeing in our students and families across the district. This has been evidenced by them providing funding to obtain evidence-based social emotional curriculums, Panorama, and putting a focus on all of our staff being trauma-informed. This benefits every single student and family, no matter what their background is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Next, let's switch gears to our McKinney-Vento, or our homeless families. National research and data indicate that experiencing homelessness can have a significant negative impact on children academically, socially, and emotionally. The McKinney-Vento law states that educational agencies shall ensure that each child of a homeless individual and each homeless youth has equal access to the same free, appropriate public education, including a public preschool education, as provided to other children and youths. In other words, we are tasked with removing barriers and ensuring qualified homeless students are able to receive the same free, appropriate public education as provided to every other student. This chart shows our totals since the 2018-19 school year, and in fact, as of this morning, for the 21-22 school year, we're at 126 qualified students. To talk about the ways that the Shawnee Mission School District is working to increase community awareness and focus on prevention before a family becomes homeless, McKinney-Vento liaison David Armovich is here to speak. David?
Rest assured, I have narrowed it down to a couple hours here. To begin with, thank you, board members and leadership team, for navigating our district during these most complex times, and for your continued support and compassion for some of our most life and economically challenged students and families. In short, we reflect trends in our community of a lack of affordable housing, livable wages, and the implications of the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, many of these challenges still existed, but the recent trajectory of McKinney-Vento numbers suggests that there's an upward trend of people in need. Consequently, we have many in our community who have encountered dire circumstances. That said, I have observed incredible strength, courage, and resiliency of those that I'm privileged to hear their stories. Through your support, one of the many ways we as a district have attempted to answer the call of the many of our families in need is through Project Home and the Family Empowerment Program. We are embarking on our 6th year of Project Home, which is a collaborative initiative between Johnson County Mental Health, Johnson County Human Services, Catholic Charities, Jewish Family Services, Workforce Partnership, Division of Family and Children's Services, El Centro, Evergy, Vineyard Church, and New City Church. Project Home has also benefited from the generous support of private donors and the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation. I am pleased to share the numbers up there in total we have helped 60 families be permanently housed, We have prevented 176 people from becoming homeless. Altogether, serving 779 people have benefited. Thank you for your time and privilege to be with you this evening.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Amanda. Thank you, David, and special heartfelt thanks to all the mental health professionals across our district for their tireless hard work and their commitment to the students, families, and staff members in the Shawnee Mission School District when it comes to the social and emotional well-being of those in our district. It truly takes a village. And with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Dr. Tyrone Bates, Jr.
Thank you, Dr. McKinney. And I want to say thank you to the board. Our board update was, and our program evaluation was at least 30 pages. And you all took, I don't know what else you had to read, but you took your thoughtful time and was very thoughtful in terms of the questions you had and responses to us. And people don't realize just how much you do. And I want to say thank you, having gone through this process again. Thank you for the unpaid hours that you put in, the time you put in. We really appreciate it. Strategy 231 says we will implement deep equity professional development for all staff, ongoing professional development centering around inclusion and diversity. Training and professional development is essential for meeting the needs of all students, but particularly minority and at-risk populations. To meet students' unique needs, professional development should include an emphasis on cross-cultural communication, culturally responsive instruction, and cultural competence. Professional development should be designed in a way that helps all educators and education support professionals understand the needs of all learners, adjust their practice in alignment with student needs, develop leadership skills, and build a capacity to overcome obstacles. Our strategic plan set out to address the needs of professional development to support students in meeting Objective 2, which states every student will develop and utilize personal resilience while mastering essential competencies that lead to college and career readiness by providing equity professional development. The district began implementing deep equity professional development in July 2019. The goal for the fall 2019 semester was to introduce the first 2 phases of deep equity work: tone and trust, and personal culture and personal journey. The first 2 days of professional development were also intended to expose building trainers and administrators to the first levels of deep equity outcomes, a shift in tone and depth of adult conversations, and an improvement in the climate of inclusion for all students. While both outcomes are largely qualitative, we were able to collect qualifiable data from surveys of the activities, which created a baseline indicator for measuring the work that would follow. In November of 2020, school trainers and administrators continued their work on Phase 3, moving from social dominance to social justice, and Phase 4, classroom implications and applications. Now that the why has been established, we were in a position to focus on the how and on integrating the 7 principles for culturally responsive teaching into instruction. This year, professional development will continue with Phase 4, classroom implications and applications, and 5, systemic transformation and planning for change. The next equity professional developments are scheduled for the fall semester of 2021 and conclude in January 2022. To get a sense of the impact thus far that our equity professional development has had on our students, we've invited 2 students tonight to share their perspective. I'm going to introduce both of them, and then I have them both come to the podium to share their perspective. First, we have Nadia Thurman, who is a senior at Shawnee Mission Northwest. She is a 2020 Princeton Prize in Race Relations winner. She's a varsity cheerleader. She is the BSU Black Student Union co-president. She is the Spirit Club secretary, the Chick-fil-A president, National Honor Society member, Race Project KC, Link Crew, and many more.
And does she sleep?
Not often. And I'll introduce Charlie because he'll speak right after her. Charlie Gray is an 8th grade student at Indian Hills Middle School. His interests include acting and music. He's involved with Heart of America Shakespeare, the Coterie Theater, and takes piano lessons. He also plays trumpet in the school band, is a member of the Yes Club and Dungeons and Dragons Club. Charlie enjoys biking, taking care of his dog Violet, video games, and hanging out with his friends in his free time. Nadia and Charlie.
Okay, so I'll start. So like you said, my name is Nadia. I attend Shawnee Mission Northwest. I just want to say the way that I interpret belonging was a space of want. So I said, basically, I just want to thank my principal for one, because I feel like without her, I wouldn't have clubs like Black Student Union and be able to have assemblies like Black History Month, and there wouldn't be clubs like Latinos of Tomorrow and Race Project KC. And without those clubs, I feel like they really helped me as an individual to grow. I feel like they definitely did help me win things like Princeton Prize and host panels and be able to stand up here today.
Hi, I'm Charlie Gray, and well, for like welcoming and belonging for me, what I really think is like when I walk down the halls of my school, I feel like I can go up to like any of my teachers and like ask them a question, and they'll be right on it. They'll help me, and I kind of almost gain a friendship with a lot of them. I also really like you were saying, a lot of the good programs and things we like to represent at our schools. Like we have, it's just a lot of really good things that I've heard that other schools do not have. That I'm like, I've had this. But I just see every day, like different students helping out each other, and there's never really like conflict, or it's just, I don't know. I just find everyone to be very nice, and yeah.
Thank you both for sharing your experiences. It's really good to hear from students.
Thank you.
And if you wouldn't mind, we might have some more questions for you in a little bit. If you can stay, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nadia and Charlie. So our goal for every student, family, and staff member is to feel safe, valued, and respected. And we want students to feel connected. And so this data that's showing here on the screen now is really important and tells us that the deep equity professional development, along with the additional work we're leading, is really making a difference. As you can see from this data, 60% of the staff surveyed here saying that there has been an improvement in the climate. 8% strongly agree, and about 2.3% disagree. And the reason this is encouraging is that the school climate encompasses a school's overall culture, a culture that is created by beliefs, attitudes, stated and unstated norms that shape and influence every aspect of how a school functions. That culture deeply informs the day-to-day experiences of students in their school environment. Additional sources of data will provide us with more information around culture and climate. First semester Panorama data looks at students' growth mindset, resilience, teacher-student relationships, and early next year students in grades 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th will take the Kansas Communities That Care survey, which is our only opportunity to get statewide baseline data and gives us insight into the problems students face and what we can do to help them succeed. This data not only provides us with great insight into how our students and staff are feeling, but also allows us to see that D&I work is not in isolation, but an intersection between so many aspects of our work. In spite of the difficulties of last school year, 81% of students said that the social connection between students and teachers within and beyond the classroom was strong. If we look at this data in conjunction with the previous data from the teachers, 80% said they feel a shift in increased belongingness and connectedness. Furthermore, this gives us hope for the future as we sustain this perception through COVID last year. Our district was accepted to the Kansas City Equities in School cohort, which includes 8 other metropolitan school districts who are seeking to develop additional lead measures for their DEIB work. 7 members of our school district staff compose our representative team: Dr. Lisa Grumman, Shawnee Mission Northwest Principal; Blake Revelle, Indian Hills Principal; Tasha Howard, Blue Jacket Flint Principal; Kristen Zuck, Coordinator of Curriculum and Instruction; Dr. Christy Ziegler, Chief of Student Services and DEI; Dr. John McKinney, Director of Student Services, and myself. This team has completed 38 of the 50-hour cohort experience. The Equities in School cohort focuses on quantitative and qualitative data assessment on DEI trends, designing strategic plan and implementation supports for equity-driven culture, aligning diversity and equity strategy across governance, operations, pedagogy, student culture, and adult culture, training on how to conduct internal equity audits and feedback loops, and coaching leaders on implementation. One of the activities facilitated by the beloved community facilitators included cohort member completion of a formative equity audit. The tool consists of 3 key standards: diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as several substandards that align to each of the key standards. The scale for organizational results is based on 5 score bands. The product is an equity work plan, which will be generated by our team in November. The equity work plan will include priorities, goals, strategies, key actions, and data metrics. As you see on the screen here, we have some baseline data, which is from the audit that our team took, which puts us at the emerging and developing level. It aligns with other schools and districts participating in the cohort, so we felt really, we rested assured that we were in the right space and time, whereas we had other districts who were in the same boat as we were trying to learn and grow towards becoming a state of belonging for all staff and students. And this formative tool is really going to be essential to help guide our continued efforts in our strategic plan. And so with that, I'll now pass it along to my colleague, Mr. Kent Glazer, to give his report on student activities.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Bates. These next few slides that will kind of take you through are not everybody's favorite topic, but refer to discipline. And I do want to thank the team here for kind of setting the stage in regards to the culture in our schools, the relationships that exist in our schools, and some of the work that is laying the foundation for where ultimately some of these things may get impacted as we move forward. The slide that we have up here, and there's 3 slides that I've pulled for you to see from a disciplinary standpoint. They are taken from our Skyward system, and they are from the 2018-19 school years forward. The data portrayed here are total incidences that were referred to the office, but not all incidences resulted in disciplinary consequences. Sometimes those incidences are done to be proactive in nature to attempt to provide additional counselor help or social worker interventions, and some of this data is just a snapshot of where we exist right now. But I do want to be able to provide you this data. This first slide here is just the students with 0 incidents from those 3 years. Obviously, it's a little bit of a prediction that last year's numbers were the highest of 0 incidences reported. The next slide is kind of the opposite of that, of those that did receive an incident. And with this is the number of students that received a suspension or an expulsion incident, and it did decrease every year, but obviously in the 2020 spring and the 2021 school year, that's somewhat, again, predictable that those incidences would be reduced. And then our last slide there is of those that received one or more incidences. So sometimes this is involving our students that are repeat offenses or have more than one office referral or incident recorded for each individual student. And with this, it shows the suspension rate for those that end up in the office and with an office referral. So you can kind of see, even those others that they were kind of staircasing down, for those that are sometimes in that repeat offense category or the offense category that they might have been in, the suspensions, and I would note that this is in-school suspension as well as out-of-school suspension, and the expulsions are going to be the lowest number of all of those. So it kind of staircases down from ISS to OSS, but these students are receiving some of those incidents, and that kind of gives us a better baseline. To continue on, though, where we want to head in the future, or where we are going in the future, was referring back to our strategic plan in 2.13. And that is strategy 2 being equitable and inclusive culture, but specifically the action committee was to create a collaborative team and to calibrate consistency in discipline coding practices. With this diagram or visual that we have on the screen right now, this was something that came out of policy JCD, which is our disciplinary action charts. They are now separated, and we have new Skyward codes into Skyward. So the previous data that I showed you, there is not a year's worth of comparison for us to go back to. But starting last year, even though we had very few incidences recorded, Skyward did have new codes for us to place a reference and begin to track a little bit more our data as we move forward. So this year, having everybody back into our schools, and unfortunately the honeymoon period is ending a little bit, and the phone is a little bit active, but we are referring to this chart. And specifically, if you notice at the top of that, the goal is for SMSD to ensure relationships are developed to foster a positive environment for students to remain in school. This visual was provided to all of our administrators and subsequently for them to provide to the building level in July. So prior to our students coming. It is basically a diagram to help keep everybody with the same focus that our intent is to keep kids in school. Levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 are where the incidences kind of are categorized out. Level 1 is more at the teacher level and is where to help on those, the relationships with our students and having engaged students in the classroom are the most important, because we can prevent level 1 from occurring as well as 2, 3, 4, but also have that established in the classroom and the ability for our educators to develop those relationships with our students and get to know them. Level 2, 3, 4, they just kind of build it as far as what the level of offense may be. Level 2 is a lot more of your common things that happen in a school setting and gives our administrators the ability to work with them and apply appropriate consequences. Levels 3 and 4 are kind of at the highest level. And so the color coding goes with this as well. It's kind of like a stoplight. Green, yellow is a little bit of caution, and then there's red, and we've got to stop and take a closer look at that. When we're in level 3 and 4, we do want ADAs to be considered, an alternate disposition agreement, which prevents students from going to an expulsion or long-term suspension hearing. It's not always possible, but it is definitely in play to be considered. And at the same time, this is sometimes where our police both SMSD and our city police do get involved, and we have to make sure that they're involved in case that there is any laws that have been broken or some of those pieces with that. But encompassing the entire diagram, you'll also notice that there's restorative justice practice. And those, there will be more training in the future, and Dr. Bates and I have talked about that briefly. This entire policy training should have occurred last year. We didn't have the ability to do that, so now we're training this year, and we implemented that in July. But also restorative justice practice, there'll be training for our administration and then some of our staff and teachers as we move forward too. So it is all encompassing to be able to pull all of those different things together. The visual representation, and if you've seen policy JCD, when you flip through, it's a lot of pages. It is also color-coded. So when somebody is looking at that to reference, and we want consistency, if you're thinking that, if you have a predisposition of thinking what your consequence is going to be before you code it, this should help stop that to some degree. Because anybody with a level 2 offense shouldn't be receiving an OSS. It's not on the matrix for their first offense. So those were some of the things that we are working with our administrators and then subsequently our the staff members in the classroom to be able to look at that and make sure that we are consistently applying appropriate consequences. And if we didn't, I wish we didn't have to apply any at all, but reality is sometimes kids do things that they shouldn't do. I tell them all don't do bad things, but they never always listen to everything that I say. So that includes my own kids. These next few slides, I just want to give you an overview with the athletic participation. So obviously when you have engaged classrooms, engaging academics, and the right culture and the right climate within your school buildings, disciplinary actions decrease. The flip side of that is how do we create some of that culture and activity involvement, and that kind of lands with activities. Athletics is just a snapshot of that. In previous program reviews, you had some of this data to reflect upon as well, and so I wanted to be able to provide you with that tonight. And these are broken into our high school for fall, winter, and spring, and then for our middle school. So this first one here that you see are our fall participation numbers, and it is updated with 2021-22. And if you notice across there, we kind of hover around about 2,000 kids involved in our athletics and activities. There was a dip, obviously, for 2021, but in the fall, that was something that we were still able to provide. It didn't happen as quickly, but it did happen. And then this year already we have more kids involved right now this particular fall season. The next slide is the winter synopsis of that. And again, grade at the high school level. So we have kind of hovered around the same numbers there. We did have a dip in 2021, but those seasons are upcoming and we expect them to rebound somewhat as well. And then the last one is the spring, and I did leave on the 2019-20 season there because if you remember, we went to spring break. We knew who was going to participate. We kind of had the numbers, but there were 1,994 kids that were, in essence, canceled. But I wanted you to see that they still would have participated if we had kept the season in play. And then obviously it fell off somewhat too. The next slide is our 7th and 8th grade participation. And each year it was somewhat climbing. And then when we got to the 2019-20 season, it was shortened. And so obviously that fell off. And then the 2021 season was canceled. Although we did in the spring have our instructional leagues, but I don't have numbers to report for that. So our athletic summary for that, we believe that our kids are excited. They were excited to get back out and be involved, and it is great to see our stands, all the involvement from not just the students that are participating in the athletics, but all of those pieces that go together. The band, the cheer, the fans, the student body, and the community that rally around all of those different pieces are very important to help set our culture and then take that back to the classroom as well. So, and at this time, I'd turn it back over to Dr. Ziegler for final summation.
Well, that is quite amount of work to share this evening, so thank you for giving us again the opportunity. We also want to conclude with expressing our appreciation for the clear and consistent guidance that the strategic plan and the work of the board has provided us. It really has been a blessing to have that as a part of the guidepost for the work that we do in this team. I also want to thank our presentation team and also Amanda, David, Nadia, and Charlie for being with us this evening, and we will now take any questions that you might want to ask us.
Thank you, Dr. Ziegler, and the team in its entirety. Dr. Hubbard, did you want to make some comments before we start on questions?
I think I just would like to thank the team again for their work, not only on this report and presentation, but just what they do day in and day out with our staff. And you see that with the conversations that Amanda and David shared, and then our students reflected as well. So thank you all for being here. I much appreciated Nadia, Charlie, David, and Amanda. Thank you.
I actually would like to kick off the questions and then move to our typical round robin format. This whole conversation is very near and dear to my heart from my former professional life. But I wanted to just ask to begin with, I noticed that the term belonging seemed to be kind of intentionally added into our focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I think is really powerful. And I just would like, Dr. Hubbard, I'm not sure who would maybe just talk about how that came about and what that means.
I don't really want to steal the thunder for this question because I know there are a lot of this group that are very passionate about this. Yeah. So I'm actually going to ask which one of you want to take this one.
You go for it, Dr. B.
Yep. So when we think about operationalizing diversity, equity, and inclusion, it shows up in the state of belonging. And so when individuals feel as though they belong in a space, diversity, equity, and inclusion are all three in place. You could have inclusion and equity, but you can't have belonging without all three. And so we thought it would be fit, and with our work with Beloved Community and our Kansas City Equities in Schools cohort, we learned how powerful that concept is, and we thought it was fitting to bring that on board.
And I would just add that when someone feels like they belong somewhere, it doesn't matter where it is. If you feel like you belong, you're going to be more comfortable, therefore more successful.
Does anybody else? Thank you for that on a number of levels. So why don't we go around and we'll start with Ms. Borgman, and we'll just kind of go around.
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. I think you guys must know the way to our hearts, and that's inviting students. So thank you very much for including students in this presentation. And I might ask Nadia and Charles a question, if that's okay. If Nadia and Charles, you want to come up, that'd be great. Thank you. First of all, you are both super articulate, so thank you for giving up part of your evening after a long day of school to be here, and sounds like school and activity, after activity, after activity, so thank you. So can you share with us what it was like to be part of this process and how you felt like you impacted other students across the district by your contributions?
I would like to go first. I think it was a really good decision on just saying, like, having a student come here, and I really just want to, like, express that, like, I think a lot of, like, students I've talked to, we're all very comfortable where we are, and I think we're very, even through these really difficult, like, COVID times, we're all, I think everyone is kind of, after the big COVID-19 kind of swiped through us, everyone's kind of more connected together and more, like, understanding of each other. So I just think I want to say that, and I think there's a good community at my school, and I assume probably at other schools as well.
Thanks, Charles.
Okay, so I just want to say thank you for having me here today, because I really feel like I am speaking for a lot of people that feel like they don't have a voice in this district. So thank you for having me, for one. And then also, a lot of my answers that I came up with were from me asking some of my classmates what did they want to see. So, yeah.
That's great. Is there anything else that, is there anything else that you wanted to mention that maybe you didn't get a chance to mention during the presentation that you thought was special or unique about this process, or just anything in general? Not to put you on the spot.
I think a lot with the suicide prevention things going around along school. I think that's really helped, and just a lot of like working on like help with mental health, because I've known people who don't have the greatest of mental health, and that a lot of, and just like having support from like even students, just maybe like helping them pick up books or something has like helped a lot. So I think just having those programs in place has just helped a lot of people that I know. So I just would like to say that.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Charles.
I don't have anything.
Okay, thanks, Nadia. Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Reverend Guy?
I also want to thank the team for this amazing report. And I do appreciate the transparency of our district in reporting out some of this data. And some of this data is being newly collected. So we didn't have this kind of data several years ago. And we're making a concerted effort to not only gather it, but to also report it out. And some of it's worth celebrating, and some of it is kind of sobering, and we wish we were in a different place. And so I appreciate that we're being honest, holding ourselves accountable, and allowing the community to see what's going on too. I want to refer back to slide 9, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging slide, about the Kaufman Equity in Schools cohort. And that was one of the sobering statistics, to be at 51 and 43 and 52%, so that we're at the emerging or just barely in the developing category. So I guess I'm curious, what would it look like if we were in the expanding or even refining category? What changes would have to happen in our district in order for us to be in either of those two categories?
That's a great question. And I think in looking through the process, and I know we've shared along the way with the Equity in Schools group that we're involved in, we still have a number of days left to complete that process. But as we look at some of the steps that we're taking through the strategic plan, we're on our way to accomplishing some of the things that you're asking about. So that's a celebration in itself. The other piece I want to go back to is what we've learned in the process, and we could share this, and we probably should have shared it in the report, is the overall national rankings for each of the standards and substandards. Because what we learned as cohorts is we are looking across our peers in other regions of the country very much similar at the point that we are. So to give something, a tangible example, like some of the work that we're doing around the topic of equity. Equity was one of the 3 standards. We've got steps in place to move forward with publishing more data around our makeup of our staff, our faculty, right? That'll be part of our dashboard through human resources. So that's a project that's underway. That's part of that transparency of what who we are as a district right now, and to be accountable to that data over time. The other piece that I think is living in our strategic plan is the Grow Your Own program that we're embarking on. But part of what will take us to the next level is making sure that we are addressing how we communicate that. So there's no hidden communication, that there's clear understanding for anyone that wants to join into that process of what the entrance ramp looks like, right? How do I get to that desired state of where I want to go, what's important to me, and what the district has available to me? So it's really starting to look, and that's what When we talk about this as an audit, before I think I had a question that was a great question to talk about. This is an internal formative process, right? So this tool allows us to understand, do we have the barriers or have we taken the barriers away? And if we can't see the barriers, help us identify those. So hopefully that helps kind of answer the question with a more tangible.
Mr. Stratton, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you for that. Very informative and very enlightening. Really appreciate the presentations. I have no follow-up questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Embry.
Yeah, I would echo just the incredible thank you for the great work. I loved every second of reading this report, so it was no burden at all. It was a delight to read. My question would be, it's probably a question for Ms. Harlow and Dr. McKinney perhaps, but a question I get a lot is why don't we have counselors in our schools, or just a lot of general confusion about what social workers can and can't do, what a school counselor does, what our psychologists do, just like the various mental health professionals we have in our schools and what their roles might be for students.
Yeah, it goes back a few years, the removal of counselors from our schools and the addition of additional social workers as a result of this board. And our social workers work with students across all three tiers in all of our buildings. They build those relationships at Tier 1. They work targeted interventions at Tier 2 and more increased interventions at Tier 3. So social workers do all the work around our mental health needs of our students and our families. They provide resources, information, in addition to participating on our SIT teams, on our BIST teams. So social workers are sort of doing all things for all people in a lot of ways. Our counselors are also focused on the mental health. They're mental health professionals and trained in those areas and educated in those areas. But at the secondary level, their work is primarily around the graduation requirements, coursework, ensuring that students are on track for graduation requirements. But that's not to say that they aren't also heavily involved in interventions around risk management, around social emotional learning of our students. So they are also very deeply embedded within the mental health work for students and families, in addition to their obligations around graduation and coursework and those sort of things. And we do also have two elementary counselors who do much of the same work as our social workers. They work in conjunction with our school social workers around the mental health and well-being of our students and families. And then school psychologists are part of the special education department, and they work with those teams to make sure that they're addressing the mental health needs of our special education students. They work in conjunction with SIT teams, social workers, counselors, administrators, and special education case managers to make sure that the special or the mental health needs of our students are being addressed as the special education IEPs are being developed. That's a lot. Amanda, anything else you want to add? That's a lot. So I can tell you, Ms. Embry, I do have the history of how counselors sort of, how that changed in our district and the timeline in which it took place, because that's been a big discussion for us around, our neighbors to the south. They have counselors at the elementary level, and why doesn't the Shawnee Mission School District? So we spent a lot of time looking at why and how that came to be. I think that we would all agree that additional mental health support would be beneficial for everyone. We're just so pleased and thankful for having a social worker assigned to every building, but we would certainly welcome the addition of other mental health professionals, particularly at that elementary level as well.
I would like to add too that with the McKinney-Vento students that we have, just navigating resources. I believe our social workers and counselors both do that, just helping students as well as families navigate those resources. And then particularly at the high school level, those counselors really play an important role in helping kids navigate the the secondary world that they're getting ready to step into, whether that be FAFSA or just, academic counseling, generally speaking, and just helping kids navigate that world.
That's really helpful. Thank you. I think the clarifying point for me is that while we may not have people whose title is counselor at the elementary level, we have people like Amanda who are trained social workers and are able to provide some counseling services.
Absolutely, at all 3 tiers, definitely.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Borgman.
And I also thank you so much for the presentation. Again, just to echo my fellow board members, it was fantastic. And David Armovich, I can't see you right now because of the podium, but you are definitely an angel on earth. So thank you for all you do for so many kids. I'm going to ask a question. There's a couple questions in it. So what are a couple things that you're most proud of in this? And what keeps you up at night when thinking about this?
I think we are all, I'll take a first pass at it and others can jump in. I think we're all proud of where we are today. And we've spoken about the addition of social workers, and Amanda articulated having, a social worker available in each one of our schools is huge. And so that took some time to get to that point. We also would be remiss if we didn't mention that we did add the 5 counselors to help support real-world learning initiatives at our high schools. They will be working hard and already are. So we're grateful to that and celebrating that. I think what keeps us up at night with all of the things that we do and the supports that are in place for our students and families is making sure that we don't miss anyone, right? Sometimes needs manifest themselves in untimely ways, unanticipated ways, and while we have good systems to look, predict, reach out, I think that's the piece that would keep us up at night. We don't want to miss any student or family in need.
Thank you, Reverend Guy.
I also want to mention a thank you to Dr. McKinney and Dr. Bates for giving a scaled down version of this presentation to the Johnson County NAACP on Saturday, and I was able to join that. I think it's wonderful that we're presenting this information to our public too, and so that they can engage with us as a district. Looking at slide 13, which is your graph, is that what you're calling it, about the discipline action charts? So the purple around everything is a restorative justice practice, and I know that that is a topic that has lots of breadth and depth to it. But for people that might be unfamiliar with that, especially in a school system as opposed to perhaps a criminal justice system where maybe they're more familiar with that, can you give us just 2 minutes on what does restorative justice practice look like in a school?
And one piece of that, just to help maybe the public that's watching or those, just removing that piece, the tools that schools typically had were detention, ISS, OSS, or call home, right? And those were the basic tools that you tried to apply to every situation that you might be faced with throughout a school year. They're not very applicable when you know in your heart or your gut that I need this action to stop, and we want you to help and grow through that. But sometimes the quote-unquote punishment doesn't fit the crime. It doesn't make any sense sometimes to go, well, you did this, and when we looked it up, it just said, I got to give you a detention. That's kind of, in a nutshell, what schools are, and it's frustrating on both sides because you want to be able to apply that, but you need to apply it fairly in all those. Restorative justice practice, we may all define that a little bit differently, and that is why we need some training there, and Dr. Bates can probably answer that a little bit better than I might be able to.
Sure. So restorative practices are centered in staying in relationship. Staying in relationship. Oftentimes what happens when we initiate a discipline consequence is we get out of relationships with students. And so what this restorative justice practice teaches us is how to stay in relationship, how not to be punitive, but be restorative. And it holds the individual who made the mistake accountable to the person who was the victim of the mistake, right? So in most cases, when there's an infraction, the process by which the resolution happens is apart from the victim. Well, restorative says, no, we're going to do that in concert with each other. The party that made the mistake is going to ask the victim, what can I do to make this right? How do I fix this? As opposed to the system saying, hey, we got to fix it, and we fixed it for you. Where it brings those two parties together, and it keeps them all in relationship with each other. So that's the biggest piece of restorative practice.
And keeps the student in school. You know, that's a big part of it as well.
Well, and I think the foundational piece to all of this, and I like how you started out with your definition, is relationships. And that's first and foremost what the work that we've embarked upon with our team at Core One is to look at how we are better establishing those spaces of belonging and relationships with every student. If students feel like they belong, if they feel like they've got trusted adults that they can go to, maybe I'm having a bad day, maybe something rough is happening outside of the school, that I know who my caring person is that I can go and address those with before I get to an escalation point that might result in something that would take us down the path of that matrix.
All right, Mr. Stratton, I will continue to move on, and if you want to chime in with if you have another question, if you have a question, then I'll circle back at the very end just to make sure we catch you, okay?
Okay, no questions. Thank you.
Okay. One of the slides that was presented tonight looks at the climate data from the Panorama survey, and this is in aggregate across the district. And I was at a PTA meeting, I think after one of the first years that it was implemented, so this data was disaggregated by building level. Could maybe someone just speak to how are principals using this information kind of at the building level, and are there other ways to disaggregate it?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Absolutely. Student surveys provide a powerful tool that's feedback. You know, they spend hundreds of hours with us, and so to ask them, how is your learning environment, your school culture, your student-teacher relationship, that is invaluable data for administrators, for teachers, and we can aggregate the data for the building, but also we can provide classroom data for specific teachers, building data, and district data. So it's really, really beneficial for everyone. And then on the student side, of course, we're asking questions around growth mindset, resilience, ownership of learning, and that teacher-student relationship piece. And so again, we can look at that data specifically for students and see some areas of strength. You know, you're demonstrating some really strong culture or areas in these topics, but also some areas where, you know, we might need to do some more development as a staff and as a district. So it can be used, student feedback can and should be used at all levels, from administrator to the classroom teacher, and make sure that it makes its way to students and families as well. And I mentioned earlier, that's a really key part in the Panorama survey that we've sort of, as a result of the starts and stops over the last few years, have not been able to take full advantage of. But our goal is to provide that information to families as well.
Thank you.
Dr. Sinclair, I would add that as you recall, that this is a piece of our accreditation process as well, and we have a district goal written around social emotional. And if not all, most buildings will have also a building level goal. So buildings would be using this data to support that goal, as well as the district will be using this data as well in the KISA process.
Thank you. What gets measured gets attention, so I appreciate that. All right, Ms. Embry.
I'd just love to know sort of immediate next steps, what's happening with the Kaufman equity cohort and where we go from here with that data.
So we have several sessions left on the journey with Kaufman, and part of that culminating activity for each cohort is to develop a local equity plan, which I will tell you, we celebrate the the fact that we have our strategic plan and the focus that we have on strategy 2, because we do feel like we are further ahead in the process. I think what you will see from us in future reports is really that formative tool and the audit that we've used. Our hope is that we can just come alongside where we're going already with the strategic plan and use that to enhance. One of the key activities that we did as a team following the last session, Dr. Bates led us through, and we started looking at all the different data sources, and it actually influenced what we did for program evaluation this year, is looking at what we already collect and report and how we can use those to tie in as indicators as we continue to measure our progress forward. So it's really helping us narrow our focus with these additional tools. Anything that you think to add?
Nope. I think those are spot on. Next steps.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no further questions, and just once again, thanks to the students who may have homework and need to get home as their parents, or they probably haven't eaten dinner, so.
Thank you all for being here. Reverend Guy? Okay. And Mr. Stratton, you're good? I think he's good.
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Embry? Okay. Thank you all very much. This was a really valuable conversation. Appreciate all the time and effort that went into this update.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. All right, that brings us to consent items. So I need a motion for approval of consent, item 4.01.
So moved, Hembry.
All right, thank you. Second?
Second, Guy.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. All right, first item on the consent general, 5.01, First National Bank of Omaha advertisement extension. Dr. Hubbard?
Actually, we don't need to go through them because they're consent.
Okay.
Unless anyone has questions.
Oh, right, thank you. Okay, all right, that brings us to 7.01, board comments from board members. So I think I'll start with Ms. Hembry.
I'll just briefly say I had the opportunity last week to go to the Kansans Can Success Tour with Commissioner Watson, and I had to look at the name, sorry. I feel really good about the work that we're doing. He commented on how the state broadly is having this big pivot but sort of toward a more holistic idea of what employers are looking for in the future workforce, and it's not just academic readiness, but also this interpersonal and interpersonal skills. And hearing the work that we're doing and hearing the data we're collecting around Panorama makes me feel like we are really, really well situated, not just to serve our community well and our students well, but I think we're really well situated for the direction that the state is going in. So I'm incredibly grateful that our community had the foresight to develop the strategic plan as they did, and I'm really grateful that we've, even when it's gotten hard and even with COVID, we haven't let any of these things fall by the wayside. So thank you to Dr. Hubbard and the entire team for helping us be a few steps ahead of where we probably need to be. And we still have a ways to go, but I'm glad we're on a good path. So thank you.
I'm going to build on that just to comment on the work being done with Portrait of a Graduate. So at the district level and at the state level, there's a lot of conversation and feedback on really flushing out that holistic perspective of what our graduates look like, and to build on, as you were just saying, building those metrics of feedback of telling us whether we're getting our students to where they need to be college and career ready with those skills. And so looking at a more holistic accountability model, I think, is really important. So I love how everything is dovetailing together. So thank you. Mr. Stratton?
Thank you. No comments tonight.
Okay.
Thanks.
First of all, I also attended the Kansas Can tour on Friday morning. Dr. Hubbard was there, and yes, I echo everything Ms. Embry said about that. It was, it was really wonderful to be in that room and hear what's going on the state level. Many of us also had an opportunity to be at John Deemer Elementary for the groundbreaking, and that was also very exciting. The students were amazing, and you could just feel the excitement in the air about this new building. So I'm excited about that. And in all the conversations tonight about how we have social workers in all of our elementary schools and how that is a huge reason to celebrate, I guess I feel like we need to keep reminding people that that was made possible because of how we allocated ESSER funds. They will run out, that money will run out, And so if this is something that the community really supports and wants the district to continue, then please help us find that funding. Talk to your state legislator, let them know that this is important for our kids. And when that money runs out from ESSER, we still want to be able to have those social workers in all of our buildings and the extra counselors in the high schools for real life learning, real world learning. So that's all.
Thank you. Ms. Borgman.
Well said, Reverend Gay. Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. You did a great job tonight. So well done. And thank you for just a great meeting. It was just kind of a reminder like why I ran for school board. So this was awesome. Thank you very much. And I'm really excited for Read Across SMSD. So I'm going to order my books now when I get home. Thanks.
All right. So I believe our meeting is concluded. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.